already, because it's already one of the very few. And again, protein is also, it's talked about everywhere. Muscle builders talk about it, aging people talk about it, health videos talk about it. It's practically everywhere, and it's never associated with anything bad. Like carbohydrates and fats are associated with becoming fat, but protein is associated with becoming muscular, right? So now that we've got the introduction out of the way, and I've shown you how present protein is in our casual life, let's talk about the more technical side of protein. Uh, can you see?
No, we are not able to see the.
Can you see now?
Ah,
Should
yeah. But you forgot about the protein will be there. Okay.
So this is a very long chain of what we call amino acids. As you can see here, there's amino acids, these small little things. So for example, this is leucine and this is serine, right? These long chains of amino acids, this is essentially what your protein is. It's a long chain of constantly repeated amino acids, also known as a polymer. This is what your protein is. Individual amino acids look like this. These are just the 9 essential amino acids out of the 22 that you have in your body. So for example, here's valine, here's leucine, isoleucine, tryptophan, threonine. All of these are very important to your body, and they're called essential amino acids because you cannot make them. The, the rest of the other out of these 9, there's 22 in total. So the rest of them can be made in your body using these 9 essential amino acids. However, these 9 cannot be made in your body. They have to be taken from an outside source. So after after your polymer is created from these long chains, it is then folded, twisted, sort of put together and created into these 3D structures that we call tertiary structures. These 3D structures are then put together to form your complex proteins. For example, this is hemoglobin, which you guys might know is the protein primarily responsible for bringing oxygen in your blood. It is made out of 4 individual protein complexes, that is, these structures. 4 of them are made up here, and each of these 4 are twisted and formed like this from these chains. There are many different proteins in your body. For example, in digestion, the digestion happens in both your mouth and your stomach. In the mouth, you'll find amylase, which is a, a protein that helps to break up the sugar molecules in the food. And then there's lipase, which helps to break up fats inside your stomach so that they can easily be digested. There's also ligase, which helps to repair and even some and also sometimes replicate human DNA. As you can see here, the DNA is currently broken because of some issues, but really DNA is just this very fragile thing inside your body, and hence, in order to make it proper, you must what do you call you must fix it every now and then, because even the smallest thing, like just a random atom decaying, can cause it to completely break, which can cause cancer. So in order to stop that, your ligase comes in and oftentimes ligase has to work a billion times every day because in every cell as it divides, and that really shows how hard your body works at keeping you safe. There's also proteins in neural transmission. This is the stuff that makes you think, it makes you smell, it makes you see, and it makes you able to understand what you're touching. It's used in the receptors that bind to the thing, as well as the things themselves that bind to the receptors. For example, this is serotonin, it makes you happy, and this is the serotonin receptor, which binds to serotonin, and that makes your neurons know that you're supposed to be happy. This is another protein. This one is exclusively for DNA replication and transcription. So basically, it takes one strand of DNA, it makes it into two, and then using these two other proteins, it adds the other nucleic acids in order to make more DNA on the sides. Basically, one DNA becomes two DNA. This is how the synthesis works, because when your cells divide, each cell needs the same amount of DNA. So they split them into two so that each side has the same amount. And there's also proteins in your muscles. For example, this is chitin, the longest protein. That is, this entire thing is one protein compared to the other ones like myosin, actin, which is multiple proteins stuck together, right? Or Z disk, as you can see, one protein, two protein, right? Titan is actually, fun fact, Titan is actually so large of a protein that its systematic name would take you over 6 hours to say. And this is the full length of Titan in its true form. There's also, I'm sure you guys know, I said muscle. I'm sure you guys know what is this. You know this Y-shaped protein, antigen binding site. This is your very loved antibodies. These antibodies have a receptor over here which helps to what do you call, to bind to the immune cells to make them, attack the thing, while these two on the side are supposed to actually bind the bacteria or virus in order to, start the signaling process. This is also a protein that's created by your plasma cells. This is also another protein. These are called MSC proteins, which essentially are ways of your cell telling your body that I'm creating. So essentially, like, you can think of a drug test. You know how the police go around and they check inside your bag, they check inside your pocket, they check inside your uh, your body to see if there's any drugs, and if there's no drugs, then it's fine. Same thing happens in your cells. See, when viruses infect a cell, they force the cell to make more viruses. But these MHC proteins, they take bits of the stuff that your cell is creating and they put them on display, sort of like showing this is what I'm making, and your body goes and checks and see, this is fine, this is normal, this is fine. If it finds something that is viral, then it causes the cell to commit suicide because that cell is creating more viruses, which is bad. Um, and there are so many more proteins in the body. However, now that we know the absolute usefulness, I mean, it's everywhere in your body. We talked about digestion, we talked about DNA replication, we talked about the way you think, we talk about you just moving your muscles. You need tons of proteins. Then, what happens if you don't get enough protein? This is called protein deficiency or hypoproteinemia. This can often result in a lot of issues, such as muscle loss. As I've said, your muscles are primarily made of mostly protein, and hence, having less protein would lead to muscle loss. It also leads to hair and nail loss, as your hair and nails are made of keratin or and substituents, which are often a sign of protein, which are actually often made of protein. Sorry. That also leads to skin degradation, as there are many proteins that are responsible for bumping up your skin and making it elastic and nice and smooth. It also causes edema, which you can see over here, which is then fluid swelling. So basically, this is kind of like inflammation, which I've talked about before, where essentially it's caused not by a reaction of the body, but by the fact that there's no proteins to stop the fluid flow. So essentially, fluids just spill out from your bloodstream into the surrounding tissue, and it causes you to become swollen like this. In fact, and you can see it's unnatural. Here you can see the doctor is pressing a little bit into the edemic leg, and that little depression just sort of stays there. It doesn't really leave. As you can see here, right? This There's more issues such as eating disorders, which you can get sugar cravings and just and less appetite. There's also excessive bleeding, as the many proteins are used by your cells in order to stop bleeding and start healing wounds. There's also a stunted or bad growth, especially for younger kids, for teenagers, and for pregnant women, if they don't get enough protein, then their child will suffer. There's also neurological disorder. As I've said before, uh, protein is used in neural transmission in serotonin and its receptors, and hence a lack of protein would also lead to neurological disorders as these systems fail. They'll also lead to infection, of course, as I've said. Our body needs proteins for antibodies and its other components, such as the complement proteins, as well as the sites that allow the body to tell which is foe and which is friend, which leads to more infections and really just a hurt immune system. It also leads to bloating, which is a feeling of like a crushing, gaseous feeling inside your stomach that often leads to extreme discomfort and a lot of intestinal issues. There's also increased fracture risk. There are many proteins involved in getting the calcium in your blood into the bones, and hence a decrease in proteins would lead to weakened bones and hence a fractured risk. There are also two major issues, such as kwashiorkor and marasmus. Kwashiorkor is essentially like this issue. You can see both of these. You can see in sub-Saharan Africa, where extreme hunger leads to extreme protein deficiency, which causes these issues. You'll see all those pictures of poor African children. You can see their bones. Sometimes their heads are swollen. Their their hands are very thin, while their stomach is very bloated. Right? The first one of you can see their bones is marasmus, which is often also caused by low calorie intake and low fat intake, as well as low carbohydrate intake. But kwashiorkor is that bloated stomach, thin hands, abnormal head, uh, misaligned bones. That is purely a protein issue, and that is called kwashiorkor. However, just like with any other nutrient in the world, eating too much of it is also a very bad idea. Eating too much protein can cause many short-term issues. For example, intestinal discomfort, dehydration, nausea, fatigue, and headaches. This is all caused by the fact that protein is involved in these processes, and when they go away, you cause uh, pain as the functions start to fail. There's also increased bowel movements and acne as your body attempts to go through the line of food to find more protein quicker. And there's also acne and thirst. This can be related to how your what body's weakened immune system cannot fight off the skin bacteria enough to stop pimples from forming. There's also bloating, which I've mentioned before, and reduced appetite. Again, I've mentioned it. There's also an increased risk of long-term issues like cardiovascular disease. You'll get more heart attacks, blood vessel disorders. You won't get enough oxygen to your body. Liver and kidney issues, as you can see here, often leading to organ failure if you're not careful. There's also seizures, which is where your brain can't tell your muscles what to do properly, and they start to spasm out a little bit, which is kind of scary actually. I've seen seizures there, not fun looking. There's also amyloidosis, which is a buildup of amyloid, a certain protein, which can cause a lot of issues and even sometimes death. There's also certain types of cancer which are formed. Here's another thing I have to mention. Many people think that proteins can be stored, like they're stored in the muscles, but that's actually that's a myth because really protein is just made and put to use. That is what protein is. It's made and put to use. You cannot store protein because protein degrades very quickly, right? Unless it's being used, all right, there is nothing that's keeping it from becoming just a bunch of toxic chemicals. So when you have too much protein in your body, there's a all bunch of protein lying around, just floating around, that's constantly degrading and creating toxic byproducts, which will cause uh, your DNA to break up, kind of like this. And hence you'll get cancer, especially if that breaking happens in a certain DNA that helps to tell your cells when to kill themselves and when to stop replicating their DNA. That's when certain types of cancer start. There's also calcium loss. While proteins are responsible for taking it into your bones, there's also the fact that some proteins need calcium, and hence they will lock that calcium into place without really it being used, which is again another issue which weakens your bones. As now instead of calcium not going into your body, there's no calcium left in the bloodstream to go into your uh you know bones. All right, that's enough about the extremities of protein.
How like people feel a lot of like we have seen everywhere.
Anyway, so this is all of the uh ways in which you get protein. This descends from 0% to 100% in the amount of weight that is protein for each of these products. So as you can see here, the least available is heavy cream, macadamia nuts, almonds, and potatoes. These are extremely bad sources of protein. They have less than 20% of their mass is protein. And for meanwhile certain what do you call certain vegetables like Brussels sprouts and products like cheddar as well as meat products have good levels. But really the best sources of food is spinaches, tofu, yogurts, which is dahi, fish, chicken, and dals. There's also red meat, uh, which has a 69%. Now coming to the reason, so as you can see, food like these, it's often said that meat is the best form of protein, and there's a couple reasons why people say that. First of all, as you can see here, they already have high amounts of protein. But another thing is that if you look at the biology of cells, you'll see that animal cells only have a thin membrane around them, which what separates our body from digesting the protein. This can easily be broken up by your acids and by your other proteins to get the proteins out. However, for lentils, for spinach, Brussels sprouts, all of these plant products, the protein is locked behind a cell wall. This cell wall is so thick that some people are considering to use it for plastic. That's how strong it is. And your body works very hard to break it down. But it doesn't have the same bioavailability as red meat. Bioavailability being how much of the protein that you consume is actually absorbed by your intestine. For these vegetables and their products, they often have very low bioavailability. Lentils are also special among plants in that they have a complete profile. While most of the fish, meat, and animal products have a complete profile. They have all the essential amino acids because they also need to make the same stuff that you and I have to. Plants are a different group of organism entirely. In fact, their divergence happened billions of years ago during a time when we were bacteria, and hence they have a completely different needs in terms of amino acids. So many of these vegetables don't have the required amino acids. They're called incomplete protein profiles, as they might not have one or more of the essential amino acids, or they might not have enough of the non-essential amino acids. So oftentimes you'll have to combine them with other incomplete protein sources, such as chickpeas, such as wheat products, such as bread. There's one example of a complete protein profile, which is peanut butter and bread, which combine to create a complete all 22 protein amino acids you will get from that combination. So really for the meat eaters, they really have direct access to protein. However, they can't subsist off a purely meat diet because red meat and white meat often have certain issues, such as they have cancerous uh, things to them. So they often have to eat it with other vegetables. Vegetarians and vegans specifically have lesser access to protein. However, with a bit of management by combining multiple proteins together, multiple vegetables together, you can get a complete protein profile. And to deal with the cellulose walls, there is this amazing thing that we invented thousands of years ago called cooking, where you take your lovely little vegetables, put them in a pot, and put them over a fire. The fire and the heat will break apart these bonds, and often, and even for you, when you get a heat wave or a heat stroke, the increased temperature in your body often causes proteins to degrade faster. Same thing happens in the cellulose. When you heat, when you boil, when you cook, when you fry your vegetables, these cellulose protein walls get broken up by the intense heat, and that makes it much more bioavailable and easy to digest in your body. Now, uh, coming to our one and only lovely food Herbalife ShakeMate Formula One and pro, and personalized protein. So, if you check the box of your ShakeMate, you will see that for your high